Beloved Saints, today's 5-minute message of redemptive history is about Amminadab Part 2, from the third book of Redemptive History series, The Unquenchable Lamp of the Covenant. Last time in Part 1, we examined how Aaron is related to the house of Aaron, the high priest. Today in Part 2, let us learn how generations were omitted in the genealogy of Jesus between Ram and Amminadab. First, generations between Ram and Amminadab, or 430 years of life in Egypt, were omitted in the genealogy of Jesus. In Matthew chapter 1 verse 4, it says Ram, the father of Amminadab. If we look at only this verse, it seems like Ram and Amminadab are father and son. However, when we carefully examine the Bible, we can find out that life in Egypt were omitted between Ram and Amminadab. What is the reason for this? In 1876 BC, Jacob led his family of 70 members into Egypt. The list of Jacob's family who moved to Egypt include Judah and his son Perez, and even Perez's son Hezron. When we look in the genealogy in the Chronicles, it definitely tells us that Ram was a son of Hezron. 1 Chronicles 2 verse 9 says, Now the sons of Hezron who were born to him were Jerahmeel, Ram, and Chelubai. Thus, this verse tells us that Ram is a figure that lived in the early stage of the life in Egypt. Also, when we learned about Amminadab in Part 1, we learned that he had a daughter named Elisheba who married Aaron, one of the essential leaders to guide the Israelites through their wilderness journey to Canaan. Exodus 6 verse 23 says, Aaron married Elisheba, daughter of Amminadab and sister of Nahshon. Thus, this verse shows us that Amminadab was a figure that lived during the early part of the 40 years in the wilderness. Through these two verses, we were able to find out that the entire 430 years of the life in Egypt were omitted or taken out from the genealogy of Jesus. And this 430 years of the life in Egypt were between Ram and Amminadab. Exodus 12 verses 40 to 41 says, The length of time the Israelite people lived in Egypt was 430 years. Thus, this duration was completely omitted and left out from the genealogy of Jesus. Hence, we can conclude that the genealogy of Jesus Christ is not an exhaustive list of every person, but a selective list from the perspective of redemptive history. Then why were the 430 years of the life in Egypt omitted from the genealogy of Jesus? The reason is because the Israelites betrayed God and served idols during their time in Egypt. Joshua 24 verse 14 says, Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. Here it definitely tells us that the Israelite people served idols when they were in Egypt and not God. Everyone, if we are to define what an idol is in the Bible, it can be anything that we love more than God. We say that we love God, but when we prioritize something more than God, that is an idol. Everyone, do we currently serve idols? In other words, do we have something that we love more than God? Do we have something that we prioritize more than God? What I pray is that we will put God first in our lives, and that we will put the fulfillment of redemptive history first. Just as the ancestors or the patriarchs of faith who pleased God were recorded in the genealogy of Jesus, let our names be recorded in the book of life in heaven. I bless in the name of the Lord. Second, the people recorded in the genealogy of Jesus are noble existence chosen by God. Genealogy of Jesus Christ is not an exhaustive list of every person, but a selective list from a perspective of redemptive history. Just like the name Amminadab, which means my kinsman is noble, God has chosen his noble people and recorded them in this genealogy. Beloved saints, we are the precious jewels that God considers most precious, and he calls us saints. God esteems his people as his most precious, unique possession, and he cherishes and protects them. So today, in the presence of God's immense love that elects and cherishes the worthless beings like us, the only thing that we can do is faithfully offer up our gratitude and our lives. Let us truly be thankful to God who has recorded our names in the book of life. I bless in the name of the Lord.